fuck these books.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Chapter 10, A Blazing Beacon, the symbol being the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai, which is sort of a weird for this one. I guess it's just referencing the fact that they're Aes Sedai sensing the one power.
Well, and they're sensing, they know that it is both Saidar and Saidin. I think that it's because they can only feel the Saidar, right? But because they're bonded to Rand and they know where he is, they know that whatever's happening has to involve him. Like, I mean, much like Perrin, right? Perrin can rationalize that anything freaking out all the channelers is Rand. Like, in a similar way, they can point to that. So I'm guessing it's kind of a reference to, like, this is an ancient act of Aes Sedai rather than a modern act of Aes Sedai, because the beacon is a dual thing.
It is a little odd that this is the chapter called where the Blazing Beacon happens, right? Despite the fact that, again, in almost every one of these chapters, we see someone identify the fact that Rand's channeling.
Yeah. It's a weird chapter to... It's funny how the chapter title and icon really focus on the beacon firing up, but the chapter itself is actually about the much more mundane day-to-day reality that Elaine and Avienda are, like, grinding through.
Yeah, no, I would much rather see like a Lion of Andor on this one, or even an Aiel spear symbol, I think would be more appropriate.
Right, and it could be some really boring title like Traveling. That's what Recruits.
So I just sort of want to set the stage, because we last saw Elaine in Winter's Heart chapter 27 when Halwyn Nori runs in and basically says there are 4 small armies marching towards Caemlyn, and those are the armies of Aramilla, Nason, Elenia, and Nayan. So those are sort of the rebels who are trying to take her down, and they've been approaching. And so she's riding out to drum up support.
The wide-eyed maid was more used to kneading bread dough than doing up rows of tiny buttons. But eventually she finished buttoning Elaine into her dark green riding dress, curtsied, and stepped back, breathing heavily, though whether from the effort of concentration or just from being in the presence of the daughter heir was hard to tell. The great serpent ring on Elaine's left hand might have had something to do with it, too. Just over 20 miles in a straight line would take you from the manor of House Matherin to the river Aranin and all its great commerce. But the distance was far greater in actual miles to be covered through the Chisane Mountains, and people here were more accustomed to cattle raids across the border from Mirandy than any sort of visitor. Especially a visitor who wrapped the daughter heir and an Aes Sedai into one package. The honor seemed beyond what some of the servants could bear. Elsie had been painfully conscientious in folding the blue silk gown that Elaine had worn last night and packing it away in a large leather traveling chest, one of a pair in the apartment's dressing room, so conscientious that Elaine had nearly taken over the task herself. She had slept poorly at first, fitful and waking, then slept late when she could sleep, and she was beyond chafing to be on her way back to Caemlyn. And we are beyond chafing for you to get there.
So Elaine is traveling to all of her local castles, all the lords that have pledged loyalty to her, to gather up troops. Now, unfortunately, most of these people have already sent their troops to Caemlyn, and they are stuck in transit in the snow. And meanwhile, Elaine is gatewaying into the castle, or really outside of it, and gathering up all the old men and boys that they have available that didn't already get sent to help her.
Yeah, all the men who the village, the estate, the community was willing to send went, and our loading bar, spinning ball of doom, and now she's showing up and taking everyone that they were like, oh no, you're not a good fit for the military because you're too young, you're too old, you already did your service, you're wounded, you're crippled, whatever it is. And she's taking those people, and then she's thinking to herself how it isn't even really to amass people at all. You
No.
know? Like, she's actually not here to gain recruits. That's just what she says she's doing. What she's actually doing is fixing her name and her banner and her image and her existence in the minds of the people who she's going to be asking within a year to all saddle up with their pitchforks and ride for the last battle. It's like she's doing 4-dimensional chess with this whole situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to read this from chat. So Ninevite says, in my binge, I just started your commentary on Crown of Swords, and Seth is like, the slog is where we're going to shine. Narrator, 2 years later, Seth, do we have to? We need this cut. We need this edit. We need this deep cut. Oh my God.
That was pretty accurate.
Yes. If you know where exactly in your binge that was, please DM me so that I can consider making this hilarious cut. Yes. We are shining. We just aren't enjoying it as much as we thought. But I'm pretty sure the audience is.
For some reason, I thought Jordan linked more of these characters back to other locations, but they're just one-offs in so many situations, and that does disappoint me a little bit, where I'm just like, oh, I thought we'd be actually finding out things about these minor characters, but when they're only mentioned once and not even referenced again, it's hard to pull a lot of nuance out of that.
Yeah. But while we are here, we are going to power through.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I still like the content, I should say. Like, the do I have to is almost a joke about the fact that it is the slog than anything else. And then the fact that I hyperfixating on the whole Choedan call cleansing, what the hell happened to Semirog thing, as opposed to getting into this new content.
It's real. But yeah, we get a lot of discussion about how Elaine has to have a bunch of clothes.
She can't ignore the cold reliably anymore, just like she can't channel reliably anymore because her emotions are bouncing all over the place, because apparently being pregnant does that to you.
Well, she has to have all the clothes because she has to project an air of confidence and strength, which means changing every 10 minutes.
That's what my girlfriend says, too.
Because nobility is stupid. I'm not a royalist. I don't.
Dude, never changes clothes every day at lunch. I don't get it.
I change clothes like every week. Sometimes
I wear a black t-shirt and jeans every day, and sometimes the t-shirt's not black.
You are wearing a red t-shirt right now.
I know. I'm really throwing you off, aren't I? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't change.
I don't get it. No.
Except when the weather is changing, because that's different.
For loving this series so much and how much it talks about clothes, we have both kind of abdicated the game of wearing clothes, where it's like, yeah, I'm just not going to play that and get dressed up anymore.
Yeah, no, I have outfits that I wear for specific yard work tasks, because I don't want to wear my yard work clothes back inside, because I'm now covered in bits of plant matter. But that, again, that's different.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, you can have 3 pairs of boots. One's got to be your worst pair that you're using for.
Right. Yeah. This is also why I really want to get into making my own clothes more, is because I don't need that many different items. I just need a few, and then I'm good for 10 years.
Can I just say, the 3 pairs of boots thing, I was just thinking about how Jordan would have written that into his series, as opposed to having Matt give a big long speech about it. He would have dropped throughout 2 books references to, Matt would have said, oh, I need my second best pair of shoes if I'm just puttering around today, if I'm just, hanging out today. And that would have been mentioned once. And then it would have been one thing hey, we're walking up, then I need my best shoes. And then someone would have been well, why do you don't you need a 4th pair of shoes? He's like, no one ever only needs 3 pairs. And they would have been dropped in all sorts of weird order all over the book. And there wouldn't have been that one speech, but you could have put it together from the references Matt made. And there would have been no explanation for what the 3rd pair of shoe is. You would have just had to figure that out for yourself.
It would have been the hanging comment, in an exchange with Satala Anan. And then she would have said that same weird Brandon Sanderson-y thing about oh, are you having class consciousness and having an academic moment?
Right.
And then when he shrugged it off, it would have made sense, because her comment would have come from a weird one-liner that really only makes sense if you think about all the things he said before.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Brandon Sanderson knew what he was doing and also had no idea what he was doing. Like, all at the same time. Because it is a point Matt would make, but not like that.
Not like that. Yeah.
But it is exactly the point Matt would make.
Right.
Like, But the thing about, like, princess being a term that is considered very old-fashioned, legend fades to myth.
Oh,
Because Elsie won't call her, anything like my lady or daughter heir or even princess, though that's considered very old-fashioned. And, like, I mean, obviously we consider it old-fashioned too, but we do still have princesses in this world, which is
that's a good point. Yeah.
weird. But we literally have princesses. And so it's just, I mean, he says from chapter 3 of book 1, from paragraph 1 of book 1, that, our world is their past. But this is one of those lines that's just like, it's so fun. It's one of my favorite lines in the whole series.
Really? That's kind of funny. I blew right by it.
I love it. I love the way Kate delivers it in the books. I just love the fact that this is the one time the word princess gets used. And like daughter heir gets dropped in there so like casually and normatively, like in book 1. And you just are like, oh yeah, the daughter heir, as one does. And then the word princess comes in and it feels anachronistic and weird and old fashioned. And it's just, I don't know. To me, it just lands at this really amazing spot. And I wanted to just hat tip to Jordan for that. Anyway, back to the actual plot of like literal ghosts walking.
Yeah, so this maid goes out and shrieks because she sees, Lady Nielen, who died when she was little, scowling at her.
Right, and it's a fun exchange because Elaine's like, "You look like you've seen a ghost," and the girl goes, "I did," which is like, that's an intimidating exchange. You're like, wait a second. What? And then Elaine shrugs it off like she's not actually bothered by it. But like knowing what comes next in the next few books, Elaine's reassurance that the dead can't touch you is like, Elaine?
Yeah. I mean, the dead themselves can't touch you, but
well,
unless
there's
you're
a
from
village
Hinderstap.
that might suck you into the ground. Like,
Right. Yeah.
that happened, it's and like weird shit's going to start happening. I mean, So Harbor is in this book, like it's one of those on the first read, you're like, oh yeah, no, the dead totally can't touch you. That was probably just a silly ninny head thing. But when you do it on rereads, you're like, this could have been a bad instance. It wasn't, but it could have been. And Elaine doesn't realize the shark fins behind her in the water, And
I think there's a really good argument to be made that because we're seeing the dead walking, the dead that Rand saw walking, the rogue Ashman who were trying to kill him, they'd been killed already, but he didn't know that. And then he saw them walking. We attribute that to a Fane talent. Could it not just be more of these dead walking?
Well, the timing's real good for Fane. And
I'm not saying it's not.
I want to yes and it and say that because that happened to Rand, that's when it starts happening to the world.
Oh.
Because Fane interjects that into Rand's reality and he is one with the land. Now the land has ghosts. I don't actually know if the timing works out for that, but it's close.
I don't think it does because I think we saw ghosts before then, but I don't know. I'd have to double check on that.
Because I feel like Fane's influence on the pattern can't help but be corrosive and thin the veil towards the last battle, even though he's not truly of the Dark One, really. Like, I can't help but think that every time he exercises his power, he strains reality, just like Balefire.
One thing I'd like to point out about the sighting of the dead, Elsie was standing on top of a strip of carpet that ran along the middle of the pale brown floor tiles, staring the other way down the hall. 2 crossing corridors opened in that direction, but there was not another soul in sight. It's a crossroads.
Oh, she was at a crossroads. And of course, that's where the dead would start appearing first. Because again, thin spots.
And so, and there is some evidence that all the ghost appearances either appear at the dusk or in this case, dawn. At a crossroads.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that town that eats that one peddler, I mean, towns are kind of always at
they're
crossroads.
usually almost at crossroads.
They have crossroads as central features. It's a thing. Oh, I never noticed that. But no, I bet you're right. And even if it's not a modern crossroads, if it was an ancient crossroads, the vibe might still be there for the ancient ghosts. Like, if it's contemporary to the ghosts, it should still count, right? Oh, that's neat. Oh, I like that.
And yeah, this Elsie is not Elsa, who was Lanfear intimidated. This is a different spelling.
Yeah, different spelling.
This is actually Elsie. Elsie, I think is what you'd have to say.
Yeah, Elsie as opposed to Els.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just a girl. That's probably Elaine's age. But of course, all of our heroes are more mature than everyone else in the cast.
I mean, they've had to grow up.
Mm-hmm. Description of the house that she's visiting, which includes this fun little detail. They have these big artistic wall hangings, and one of them shows the women of House Matherin presenting a sword to the first Queen of Andor, an event that Matherin treasured and that might or might not have actually happened.
I love that line too. Yeah, I definitely highlight that as a fun one. The like ancient things. It's like, yes, this definitely happened. Everyone's like, maybe. I mean, I'm glad you think it does, and I'm glad you've put your whole identity around it. But the jackalope's not real.
Right. And like, is the stone of Scone really that important? Really?
Yeah. Is the Liberty Bell with the crack in it really that important that Philadelphia has to put his whole identity around it? I mean, it's got the Declaration of Independence too, but the Liberty Bell is just a little bell that's cracked.
You have any idea how small the Mona Lisa is?
Yes, I've seen the pictures of people like next to it.
I've been there. I've literally been there. It's so fucking small. It's so tiny.
Is it even life size?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's so well, maybe, I don't know. I didn't get that close to it. But like it's so small. It's so small.
And those are real things.
Yeah.
That happened.
I mean, who knows? I mean, apparently the fucking fake gets put out half the time because like weird art thievery reasons or whatever. I don't know. Is any art even real?
If you can't tell the difference, is it a fake?
I know, right?
Right.
I will say, though, going to museums full of ancient shit is really cool. I do get the concept of the appeal of old things and attaching a mystic symbolism to a thing that happened. And at a certain point, the myth takes over whether or not the thing is real. Like, I get what Elaine's going with here, that, like, the myth making of a nation is real once it becomes your identity.
Because, what is it? History is written by the survivors or the victors?
Winners, yeah. Victors. Victors might be more period correct to the original, yeah.
But yeah, just the idea that like history is very malleable and what you believe happened is at best one perspective, which has, I'm sure, faded with time and rumor and legend. And we have the theme of the book again. So
yeah, it's very much so. And I mean, Elaine even tells us you have to learn one period of history from at least 3 different angles in order to actually conclude what happened. Like, Elaine makes a big point of telling us that in this arc, not in this chapter, but in this arc. So yeah, it's but you know, at a certain point when you're trying to bring a bunch of people together like Elaine is, does it matter? You know, if you can't tell the difference, does it matter? Yeah,
exactly. You go with it. And okay, that's what you think. Even if it might not be true, we're assuming it's true and moving on as though the reality of it is that truth.
Right. And that never comes back to bite you in the ass, by the way. Like, turning away from the realities of where you came from and completely lying about it and moving forward based on a myth that only serves a very narrow section of the population, that never bites you in the ass.
Not in this country, anyway.
No.
Yeah.
No. This country is absolutely not in danger of having that happen. Nope.
So...
there's this really cool description of Avienda.
So, okay, do we want to start talking about that thing that you were afraid of was...
No, it's in like another 2 pages.
I know, but okay, there's a reference here.
Oh, okay.
They would have shared a room if not for the implication that Marin could not provide adequately for the 2 visitors of note. Mm-hmm. I think that is just they just casually share a room, right? Avienda and Elaine would always share a room together.
Yeah.
If they could. And like, and okay, just keep that in mind moving forward.
Yeah. And then the next thing I have highlighted is this description of Avienda, specifically her jewelry, because Elaine's thinking, wow, she really looks like a wise one, except her jewelry is not there. There's not enough of it. But, you know, she does have 3 pieces. She has a long silver Kandori necklace, which I think that's what Egwene gave to her, right? Yeah, Egwene gave her the necklace. It's a silver Kandori pattern called Snowflakes. And Egwene thought that it was a good gift for a woman who would never see snow, which was preceding the Igloo chapter by like 2 chapters. So it's
which just
really
makes
funny.
That snowflake necklace have all that much more significance, because it's like you were in the middle of snow when you first had sex with Rand.
Yeah, it's really funny because it's like Egwene's like, oh, she'll never see snow, and like literally like a week later in world, she's losing her virginity in more snow that she knows what to do with.
Oh, I feel like there's some real symbolism there to Elaine giving her Egwene giving her this sort of permission.
I see how you want to make there a thing.
Yeah.
I want there to be a thing too, but I don't. It's you know, Egwene
or maybe just RJ being a little
It's mostly RJ.
Yeah, that doesn't even feel just like in universe or anything like that. It's just RJ being like, hee snowflakes. Yeah, that's gonna have meaning later. Yeah,
Snowflake and Avienda. That's keep that in mind. So she has that necklace. She also has an amber brooch in the shape of a turtle, which is an Angreal that they got in Ebu Dar, I believe. That's one of the ones that Elaine pulls out of the panniers and then gives to Avienda pretty much right away. And I think she uses it for the cleansing.
Yeah. Don't they end up passing it around a little bit? She ends up giving it back to Elaine, because I feel like Elaine has it when she confronts the Dark Friends. I might be wrong about that.
Yeah, I think she does it. I think she gives it to Avienda when Avi leaves.
Right.
Or something like that. But yeah, so that's an Angreal. And then she also has a wide ivory bracelet. And that is the gift from Rand, right? It's a bracelet of roses and thorns, basically. And he got it for her because it was pretty and he thought it suited her. And it's the foundation of her Wise One jewelry.
So I'm about a block away from a bar called the Rose and Thistle, which is actually, and I've been really enjoying, they make actually really fucking good food, great French dips and good beer, nice outdoor patio, covered space. I mean, just knocking it out of the park. But I always think of, pub food. I always think of the bracelet whenever I'm like, Rose and Thistle, which it's like the ivory bracelet is rose and thorns.
Yeah, but it's definitely Rand holding up a boombox, but it's playing Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Every rose has its thorn. Nice.
Yeah, it's such weird, hopeless, love-struck puppy energy coming from that necklace or bracelet. The necklace is also a relationship that should have happened, but whatever. Avienda tries to mother Elaine, and Elaine is really irritating back. She does the whole like sickly sweet voice, which like honestly, I'm super on Elaine's side for all of this. People are like micromanaging her, and she's just like hyper saccharine voicing at them because it's annoying. Like that would be me in that situation. That is exactly how I would respond.
Being babied is not Elaine's favorite thing, and it's like she's frustrated that she's like, a good many had known before she did that she was pregnant, right? These people, she's like, because Min blurted it out. And so and then she goes, thinking of her baby, at times she wished Min had said whether it would be a boy or a girl, or rather that Avienda or Brigida could recall exactly what Min had said. Can we read what Min had said?
I can recite it from memory. A boy and a girl, both healthy and strong.
Yeah, she told her. You're getting twins.
Being blackout drunk.
Apparently.
Is a bitch.
Yeah.
There's one line in all of this whining about the coddling that I feel like it's RJ almost hitting a point of self-awareness. Those who had never born a child themselves were the worst. You know how we complain about this arc of pregnancy written by a man and how he just does not understand how pregnancy is? He, right here at the bottom of page 319, he almost gets it. He almost gets it. And then he just keeps right on writing and doesn't actually get it.
I mean, if you've got to write about pregnancy and you don't know it, you still got to put words on the page, I guess. come up with something.
There's this thing called collaboration and sensitivity writers and asking people what their lived experience is and reading books. I heard RJ did a lot of reading of books. So I feel like maybe reading something other than like Dr. Spock, maybe.
You mean if he spent
within his wheelhouse?
Fraction of the time learning about pregnancy that he spent learning about weapons, this might have been a more balanced scene?
Possibly. I'm just saying.
So here's a question. Did Harriet ever have children? You know, it's funny that I don't know that.
I know they didn't have kids.
Right. They met late enough in life they could have had children. Dana's saying she did have a son. Unless I'm reading that wrong.
Okay, so I guess one pregnant person signed off on this, but you know, people are not a monolith. You know, maybe listen to more than one voice when constructing a massive thing that like half of the global population is threatened with from the day that they embark upon puberty. Just a thought. But it's funny that he's like, yeah, people who don't know what they're talking about are the worst. Don't mind me. I'm just going to keep on going.
There is a little bit of hypocrisy in that statement, yes.
But also, you know, I mean, the fact that he spent a huge amount of page time on women's troubles is also maybe kind of cool.
Yeah.
That he didn't just write it all off and have her be like a Mary Sue who isn't impacted by pregnancy. He actually had her dealing with it and still being competent, like to some extent, and spent a lot of page time being like, this is a reality that sometimes women have to run countries and be pregnant at the same time because biology is a goddamn asshole.
Well, and I'm thinking about how much we rooted on Shail when she was fighting in that scene in the TV show, right? And bearing Rand at and no one was like, that idiot, what is she doing fighting at 9 months pregnant? That doesn't make sense.
A lot of people actually were.
Well, okay, fair enough. But
they were all assholes who nobody wanted to listen to.
Right. So we sort of, and that wasn't even the end of the world. That was just, you know, a revenge killing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely read a couple of people being like, yeah, no, that's not how giving birth could possibly work, but it's fine because the only people who, they were all fine with it. But yeah, depicting pregnancies in media is an interesting dance that not very many media people get right. So I guess it's all right that Jordan didn't nail it.
I also feel like pregnancies aren't monolithic. A lot of people have a lot of different experiences when pregnant.
Yeah.
That you can't just say this is how pregnancy is and this is how it goes every time.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I know a person who genuinely experienced no pain during giving birth 4 times. Genuinely had no pain. Like, that's not supposed to be possible.
Right. Wild.
But 4 times. Just like, well, there you go. Like, what? So yeah, it's pregnancies are absolutely not monolithic. And so if he wrote an experience that mimicked Harriet's and she was like a few pointers here and there, good to go. And then her experience was not at all an average one for the readership, then, but again, it's like multiple perspectives, right? You get your history from 3 angles. You get your pregnancy story from 10 different women across 20 years. Like, you put it together in aggregate, maybe you'll be a little bit less off. But I'm not a writer. I'm just a critique.
I'm just a critic. The next thing I have is Rand jumping locations, right? So we get a little bit of a timestamp, right? This morning, he had traveled to the west from the far south, right? And we know that was from Farmatting to Shadowlogoth. Then we get what I think is, you know, a very typical women in Randland statement. If he allows himself to be killed, I will cut off his ears, which is a very naive statement to make from Avienda, which is, if he lets himself die, I'll kill him. You know, one of those situations.
All of the main girls with love interests in this book make that threat at some point or other. I swear, every woman who has a love interest we care about says that.
If you die, I will kill you or mutilate you in some way, and you'll have to deal with that. And it's like, but I'll
Nynaeve
be dead.
even threatens Elaine with that. It even gets extended to non-romantic friends.
I think Fail threatens Perrin like that. Like,
it's RJ clearly really liked that as an expression of ultimate love, and I'm not mad about it because it is funny.
It is pretty funny.
It does add a little bit of levity to like a really dark situation that allows you to say the thing, but then immediately like cover it up with humor. it's a good way of stepping around that admission that like
to say I will be devastated if he dies versus if he dies I'll hunt him down and cut off his ears, right? Like you're saying the same thing, but one of them is a much better, much less serious, much less sad way of saying it. Yeah, and so then they do the like laugh until you cry and then maybe start actually crying thing, and Elaine thinks about how weird it is that she's, in a polyamorous relationship. And then there's this line that I just crossed out, that she loved Avienda every bit as much as she did Rand, only in a different way. We're just going to cross out only in a different way, because that was some weird ass pandering that Robert Jordan was putting in to directly contradict his own work. I think you're misinterpreting that. Like, I think in a different way doesn't mean non-physically or non-romantically. It just means that she loves Rand as a ruler, and she loves Elaine as, someone who's with her and a friend and a loyal person. Like there's this, I think she can love them both romantically and still love them in different ways.
I think you're giving way too much 2020 scale credit to RJ's writing. I like that interpretation,
I'm choosing,
but I don't think that's what he meant.
So don't go with the intent of the founders, because you can never be sure. You have to go with the words on the page, and I think that these are vague enough that you can very, very much interpret them in a way that they are. She loves them both romantically, but they are very different people, and it might even be so much that she loves Rand from afar and Avienda from up close, because she rarely gets to see Rand, and Avienda she spent intimate, large amounts of time with. That's a very different way of loving somebody.
Okay.
I wish everyone could have seen your face before you said that. You're just like, okay, yeah. Robert Jordan was trying to say that it was platonic love and that Avienda and Elaine aren't getting it on, despite the fact that they always sleep in the same bed, despite the fact that they ache with missing each other, and it leaves an empty spot inside of them.
Tell me that a man writing for a 2003 mainstream audience wouldn't put in that one little line so that way all the queer subtext could be easily blotted out by the censors.
Yes, but also that the man was vague enough that he would let us interpret in the way that we wanted to. He didn't put a hard and fast absolute stop on it. He just put enough in there to get by the censors and the prudes.
But how many people know about the 7 different kinds of love versus how many people think that love is sex and sex is love and that's the end of it? Even today, who are reading it.
Well, that's the thing. I think you've got a Venn diagram. The people who would be upset about this polyamorous relationship are the ones who think that you can only love people in 2 ways. And the people who know that you can love someone in lots of different ways would be able to interpret this differently. I really like what you're saying. Schrodinger's statement. It's basically...
The line has aged well.
Yeah.
It has the vagueness to allow it to age well. I just don't think that was always the correct interpretation.
They're either in or not in a physical relationship, depending on whether or not you've looked in the box. And until you've looked at the box, they're both in and not in a physical relationship. And I'm not taking the reference of the box in any other term than the cat that's in it. I'm telling you, the fact that it's a cat in a box, there's too many pussy analogies. It's too hard not to make something about being inside the box some sort of sexual innuendo, especially when it's a cat.
It's too hard? Really? Really?
Well, it is now.
I need Nameless in here.
Okay, we've been listening too much to Rollin' After Dark. Oh.
Oh, boy. This is bad. The next thing I've got is Elaine thinking about how Rand is going to die, and they could not kill Saidin, and the taint on the male half of the power was what was going to kill him.
While he's cleansing it.
Well, give it another 5 minutes, Elaine. Right. He's going to get on that. Yeah. He's going to fix that, so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to kill the taint. Mm-hmm. Rand's on it.
I think it's fun irony, except I think it's just something they think about constantly, is the fact that the taint is going to kill. Like, you'd be like, oh, I can't believe she thought about it right before he's going to cleanse the taint. It's like, yeah, but she probably thinks about that constantly. It's a constant burden that the person you're going to love has this death sentence / ticking time bomb to going insane on them. Right? Of course she's going to think about that almost every day.
Yeah. But it's nice that he reminds us that, like, that is the thing she's struggling with. And then we, get her head jerking around to the big beacon that says, that's about to be checked off of your list. I mean, not that she knows that, but...
And as I've said many times, Robert Jordan loves to prove his characters wrong. So this, definitive statement that he will die from Sidene and there's no way to fix that, immediately proven wrong by the cleansing.
So she thinks about her rumor mill, her own personal rumor brand, and how few would support a coward, and none of those people she wants on her side. So kind of exposition on her political reality.
Yeah, I skipped over all that. Yeah.
And then, we talked about the soldiers already. And then, we get to the guard, I guess. Her bodyguard, maybe, is the next thing worth talking about. I mean, we've already seen them and talked about them. Basically, just she has a bodyguard of all female soldiers in fancy clothes because, quote, a bodyguard her enemies would dismiss until it was too late for more than regrets was her aim. She spends a page and a half talking about it, but that's the point.
I thought it was funny that Avienda got her horse because its name meant spear. And that's why she, even though it's like a terrible horse for her because it's way too spirited of an animal and she can't control it, its name was Spear, so she chose that one.
It's like, then get a different horse and name that one Spear. God. Horses don't know what their name is. It's fine. I do like that Robert Jordan has the horse handlers as being women here. Just kind of like one of his efforts at being like, no, this world doesn't have any sexism. Like, the people handling horses could just as often be women as men. It's a moment. It's nice.
This is where we see Master Ross, who runs the castle, is sort of the quartermaster or whatever. He brings all the people who are left, and we see that it's just a bunch of boys and old men with cast-off weapons and crappy spears and old bucket helmets that were too rusty to actually go into service and fight for her. And that does become a bit of a theme, right? That she's like desperate for troops, but they're all moving. And then they all show up right after she wins the throne. But that's good because then she has all these troops for the last battle.
Right. It works out well. It works out just in time. It's almost like there's a Taviran pulling on
like a
everything.
Pattern or something to it. Yeah.
Because she wins the succession and then keeps her people alive by losing almost all of them. Like Caemlyn Andor definitely goes through kind of a macro scale of what the Two Rivers went through in Shadow Rising. Like as she thinks in this chapter, Andor is going to bleed sons before the end. And like, it really does. Like,
Caemlyn especially.
She is constantly reaching for like one more desperate group of people to manage to pull it all together. Like that's her whole arc for all that she portrays confidence. She portrays confidence by the skin of her teeth on top of an ever teetering pile of barely holding it together. And then, Elaine talks more about her whole rumor mill thing, which I am skeptical that everyone is so bored with their lives that all they have to talk about is how Elaine came to town and that it's going to spread like an ink blot and everyone's going to speak in favor of her because they talk of her. Because like, as we've seen with the internet, some of the most well-known accounts out there are ones that everyone hates.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
like engagement is not always positive.
Right. But I'm thinking this is like the train campaign that some of the early presidents did when trains came out, where they got on a train and they rode from town to town to town, shaking hands.
Whistle-stop tours?
Whistle-stop tours. Thank you very much. Yes, she's basically doing a whistle-stop tour, which in early politics, especially before gateways, the idea of a politician visiting every single village is absurd. There's no way that she'd be able to do those kinds of visits. It would take her weeks to go between each visit. She'd be out of town, And so what she's saying basically is, I need this support right as soon as I get the throne. I need to be able to call on these people. And usually it takes years for most nobles to ride out to all of these villages and talk to them in person. I'm doing that in days with traveling. And so I see her Whistle Stop Tour about creating that sort of support and using gateways to do it in a way that would have been impossible before gateways. And so essentially it's free money, right? It's free publicity, because anybody else who's going to do what she does literally has to ride from city to city to city. And essentially she can't take the time because they're busy contending for the throne, right? Meanwhile, she's saying, hey, I know I'm besieged at Camelin, but I'm in your town too, and I'm in your town too, and they can't stop me. And guess what? You just saw the queen. You know, you want to say you saw the queen, so you're going to support me because you didn't see Aramilla. You didn't see Naesin, right? You saw the queen of Andor. You didn't see the daughter heir. You didn't see someone competing. You're going to tell them you saw the queen, and you want me to be queen, so you can say you saw the queen.
That does make sense. I don't give enough credit to the fact that although this is the far future, it's also no telegraphs and no trains level of information spread, and it's different when you're an internet person. You can't remember what it's like when information was pigeon or slower.
I do. Well, not pigeon or slower, but I remember pre-internet days for certain. I remember sending literal letters being like the fastest. Postcards were the fastest way to let someone know how you were doing, right? Like that's why you sent them when you were on vacation.
Right. I mean, you had phones, which these guys don't have, but yeah.
Yeah, but long distance was so much cheaper to send a postcard than it was to call somebody. I have a big blank in my notes after... I may not have 1 year, but I need every Andoran to stand behind me.
All I had was that like they have some really cute flirting, because Avienda's like, "Oh, I think I'm going to learn a great deal about being a wise one from you," and Elaine blushes, and then later on, the same thing happens in reverse, and it's just very gay, very flirty, and it's just cute.
See, that's why I don't understand how you can say in that line totally negates any chance of relationship, and then have them flirting in the same chapter.
That's what I'm saying, is Robert Jordan was wrong. He just threw these stupid little lines in to be like, oh, no, it's totally different. But, like, meanwhile was writing a very gay story. Like, it just, that line feels so out of place.
That's why I had Canada away as just a different kind of love.
I love the alternative explanation that actually it's just a really progressive line that aged super well. I'm super okay with that headcanon. That's fine.
Yeah, moving on. Because we've talked about this line many times before when we've talked about the relationship. Because I know this line upsets you. I know this is something that's come up before, and I know, and so I thought about it a lot. And I think I'm
I like it. Yeah. I like your patch. It's good. It's better than me bitching about it.
And also, I like Fairy Phoenix saying they could be lying to themselves too. I totally don't love her that way. Yeah,
in my Wheel of Time,
right? Like a little hypocritical.
No.
Yeah.
Very shocking. We also have the really hilarious thing of Elaine being resentful towards Rand for getting her pregnant. Like, you know, all right, she had helped him, instigated the doing, in fact, but that's beside the point. It's very comical. It's very fun.
The typical, you did this to me pregnancy when they're sitting there giving birth. Yeah, totally.
It's just like, I love it. Excellently well delivered.
90s humor to a T right there.
Yes, very much so. And then, I've got a blank until we get to the gateway making.
Yeah, so Avienda's making the gateway because we've now retconned making a gateway somewhere means you learn the destination, so you can continue to make gateways from that location. So if you gateway into a place, you can always gateway out of it, which is not what I fucking thought the rule was, and I'm absolutely certain is a change to where Robert Jordan was like, fine, I want to use gateways more. I can't have them sitting around for a day each time. I'm going to retcon it that you can learn it. Because for a while it was you could learn it faster by holding the one power while you were in that location. So it took you down from a day to maybe like 12 hours or 6 hours or something like that, right?
And then there was the Bowl of the Winds was like enough because it was such a huge thing.
Right. But like...
He really wanted to speed it up. I agree. You can feel Robert Jordan getting impatient with his own rules.
Right. And I feel like this is just him working around it.
Yeah.
And Sanderson took that little bit of leeway and, ran a mile with it. But
yeah, just broke it.
Yeah, totally. What else can I do with gateways?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where when you start pushing on physics that is like the reason we don't have gateways is because they would actually break reality, right? Like you have weird cause and effect issues, you have pressure differential issues, you have the world spinning issues, right? Like there's all sorts of things about gateways that we just kind of have to say, well, magic, right? And I feel like Sanderson he definitely took those and pushed them to the limits. And in a lot of ways, that does kind of break, So I guess what I'm coming from is when we get the miracle, right? When Andral, makes the circle and creates the giant gateway and brings the lava of Dragon Mount to the last battle, right? It kind of breaks gateways because the reason the lava spews out is because it's under pressure. Right? But they constantly make gateways to mountaintops where the pressure differential would create hurricane force winds.
Yeah.
So can you or can you not? So that it's one of those things where it's like you can't do that. It's magic. Like you can't do that.
There's a reason magic doesn't exist in the real world. There's physics exists.
And Jordan always avoided that by not really by basically saying, oh, the gateway magically evens the pressures out between the two sides, right? You don't have this pressure differential.
Right. And also, we'll get there in however many years, but that lava should be doing some things that it doesn't do in that context. And I will be taking us all on a lovely digression about pyroclastic flows when we get to that scene.
Excellent. Cannot wait. Yeah, because there's gases escaping, right? And stuff with the pressure.
Yeah, there should be a rising column of ash and smoke that blankets the landscape for miles around and burning rock cement floating through the air. I mean, it's not just going to be a lava flow like in Hawaii. This is from deep inside. There's going to be a bunch of water. Water's going to, huge amounts of steam should be blowing out of that lava and just shattering everyone's eardrums and pulverizing their spleens and just roasting them all to a crisp. And there's a lot wrong with magic in the real world. And that's why we love it so much.
I love that statement. There's a lot wrong with magic in the real world. I think we can, that's why it doesn't work. Physics is a set of rules, and magic says, screw you, no. And I think Sanderson just got a little too close to the edges.
But Sanderson likes to
he likes to
max things out.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. But, it's just reminding me of that really old Daniel Green sketch of guns in magic, in magic worlds. And it's wait a minute, the gun just breaks everything. Yeah.
And Fire Phoenix is pointing out an interesting little bit. Remember, Avienda's had some issues with gateways because of the whole sex igloo thing, right? She created her gateway in a very specific weave way and has had to unlearn that and relearn gateways in a different, in the Aes Sedai way of creating gateways. And that's actually made it more difficult for her to create gateways, which might be why she wants to practice. But I think the real reason is that she doesn't want Elaine to try and channel while pregnant, because it doesn't always work.
Right, which it's so confusing because there's all this oh, you can't do anything because you're pregnant, but the very real reality is that she's going to have a harder and harder time with channeling. It's not that she's gonna hurt herself. It's so weird how she needs help, but she's getting it for all the wrong reasons and in all the wrong ways. And it's fine if it takes her a few tries, or if she tries and then has to get Avienda to do it. The whole pretense of keeping her from doing it is just weird.
But if she can't embrace the source on their way back and no one else has learned the location by creating the gateway, they will be stuck.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
So that's why whoever makes the initial gateway continues to make the gateways, because they are learning the location every single time. And that is, otherwise they'd have to wait the 12 or 24 hours to learn the location to get back, or leave the gateway open.
I hadn't actually thought about that. But yeah, they are the only two channelers with the party. So, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it makes sense to have the person who's not having an uncertain power access doing the thing, but it keeps getting presented as protecting Elaine, and it's like, she doesn't need protection. She needs infrastructure support. Same action, different motivation. We talk about how the Aes Sedai don't know how pregnancy works because they don't have children, which is like, yeah, such a weird oversight on their half. Thanks for telling us about that, RJ. You could have built a world that was different, but all right.
I mean, it tells you something about the effectiveness of Heartleaf tea, right? Like, It seems to be a 100% effective contraceptive. Again, magic in the real world, right? Like, it seems like an amazing, amazing tea. It's something he just brushes over, and it's something that I think is quite progressive in the Wheel of Time. Perfectly effective birth control. Now, is it progressive, or did Robert Jordan just not feel like writing nuanced contraceptives?
Well, it's not progressive to say that the women's management of their reproductive health is a completely non-issue that doesn't need to be addressed by the plot whatsoever because it's just magic hoo-ha.
Yeah.
Like, it's not progressive to say that women don't have to make this a man's problem.
But it's like the idea that any woman anywhere has the ability to control her own pregnancy, and they do so, and they never consult with the men.
That is true.
That's what I'm trying to say is the more progressive. Like, there's
as abortion bans come clamping down on our fellow Americans. That's a really good point.
Not just abortion bans, but making it difficult to get access to contraceptives is a thing in this country, you know, and that's not what's going on in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, and there is some mythic basis for Heartleaf tea.
We've talked about that in the past, I believe, on other episodes. Yeah,
it's. I'm not sure how apocryphal the real world story is, how much of it's a myth, and how much of it's definitely a thing. But he's definitely referencing that myth, whether or not it's real. He is absolutely referencing that, and that is also fun.
But the idea that there was a plant that did this very thing, and it got essentially picked to extinction because everybody wanted to use it.
That there was an herb, a Greek island that had this herb that allowed for women to not have to have kids all the time. And the Greeks and Romans and other people who were nearby that island absolutely harvested the fuck out of it to extinction. That's the myth. And there are other plants that have contraceptive abilities in the world. And obviously, you know, we've synthesized drugs from them. You know, it's a thing. And other fantasy relies on even more mystic stuff, you know, like, oh, this is a pendant that was, you know, blessed by a goddess, so you won't get pregnant. Or, you know, this is a magic incantation or whatever. Like, the fact that he has it grounded in herbalism is kind of fun.
I mean, but, okay, here's my thing. It wouldn't be that hard to prevent pregnancy with channeling, right? Like, you only need to know just a tiny little bit about the body to block something off with a plug of air. Right, you can essentially do temporary vasectomies, right? You just plug the Venn difference, and there's no sperm.
Yeah, you'd think that would totally be the kind of weave that the Age of Legends would have figured out. It's just like, set this little standing weave, like right around the gonads, and then when you want to have kids, just come back and we'll just undo that weave, and there'll be even less side effects than anything else. I mean, it's nice that RJ thinks, well, there's an herb that prevents it, but he could have gone farther and been like, instead of being ignorant of women's reproductive anatomy, Aes Sedai should be like super holding on to that information and making why is the Yellow Aja not the ultimate birthing group that's like, they've got their midwifery center in every major city, and the amount of people who are dying in childbirth because the Yellow Aja aren't doing anything,
Naivete is pointing out that the Aes Sedai don't even know the pregnancy delving weave that the wise ones know. So, there's just no interest in pregnancy whatsoever, which from a group of women seems willfully ignorant.
Yeah, it's
and it's all, or the Greens at least. The Greens should be interested in pregnancy. They are sleeping with their warders, right?
They're the fuck Aja.
Yeah,
they are the literal fuck Aja, and they don't know if Elaine is a Green, right? And she's never thought to ask if the Aes Sedai know these things. It's just like the biases of the place that Robert Jordan was writing from show up so much in the institutions that he has as your ground zero for the world building. It's like, he's got these exotic, cool people with neat ideas elsewhere, but his ground zero is like, what in the puritanical, joyless hellscape is this?
Well, I mean, that's Two Rivers is definitely this American South. So.
What in the puritanical, joyless hellscape is this?
Yeah, Fire Phoenix is asking, does the Wheel of Time have STIs? I don't know, but if they do, I'm sure Hanlon has some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but if they do, yeah. I know for sure
and
that there's...
They have to, right?
Yeah.
They have to. Like, human biology being what it is. Like...
Time is a wheel, and I don't think that we cured STIs in any of the ages.
No, we're in a perpetual arms race with microbiology. The bacteria and the viruses are all out to get us, and that will never change.
But I imagine you could delve someone and cure them of STIs that might not be curable.
Yeah, it seems like, you'd be able to delve someone and then clean up whatever they had going on, and it wouldn't be an issue.
I wonder how many unrelated illnesses get treated when someone goes in for a healing for like a cut bone or something like that, right? All of a sudden
because
you don't
they can't
have
modulate. Yeah,
all of a sudden you don't have brain syphilis, right? Like you go in for treatment for a broken arm and your brain fixes because they killed a virus that was living in you, with the one power and the sort of generic healing that they do. Because Perrin talks about how he doesn't have the sniffles anymore, right? Like, so it clearly can take out viruses and colds and shit like that.
So it could clear out like toxoplasmosis from crazy cat ladies and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So we can't blame that for why Marilyn Gamalfin is a dark friend then.
Unless she's never been healed.
She's an Aes Sedai. Presumably she's been healed at some point.
I mean, you live in the tower your whole life, unless you break a bone.
That's true.
I don't know. I mean, I guess cuts and scrapes, they heal those as well, but...
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like the Yellow Aja should be doing some health clinics. Right?
Well, sure, yeah.
Sneering at herbalists. It'd be like everyone should just get an exam once a year, I don't know. Universal health care for all Aes Sedai.
So in the middle of thinking about babies and birthing and stuff we've gone on for way too long about, a blazing beacon on the hilltop, right? Like Rand starts to cleanse Sidene and it interrupts her mid-thought.
Mm-hmm. And nothing changes in the bond with Rand, but the blast of Saidar is coming from the exact same direction. So she assumes that Rand must be involved in whatever is happening.
Right. And because he's not panicked or worried or anything, she's not panicked or worried.
She is too panicked and worried.
Well...
She says, he is in danger, we must go to him. And then Aviendha says, no, he shouldn't.
Don't call me out like that, Jesus.
Yeah, she is very much panicked and worried. And then Aviendha is like, hold up, slow down. I have special Wise One knowledge that gives me spidey sense tingles of danger. And also I have a really good argument for why we shouldn't go, because he will probably, him or his allies, as we know, will probably attack us if we show up. Because absolutely would have happened. Totally.
Which they would have. Yeah. Catswain would have pointed and there would have been a column of fire and she would have fucking roasted Elaine.
Yeah, because of course Elaine is assuming she could just run headlong into a situation and get through it just fine. That's very on brand for her. But yeah, it's a terrible idea. And I suspect that I believe Aviendha completely that
yes.
The pattern was like, Elaine is going to insist on doing this unless you have the best possible mystic level reason. And so that is going to be inserted into your Rolodex of memories from this.
And I actually really love this use of the testing because we see that from a lot of other characters where the testing does affect their behavior going forward. They do make decisions, especially Moraine, based on what they see in the accepted test. And I like that this comes back. The only thing we've known so far from Aviendha is that she was going to fall in love with Rand. And this is actually the first time we're finding out that she also knew that she would find sister wives. And so those were all things that she learned during her testing. And also this is another one of those, this is what we reference, right? This is when we go back and say, we know that Aviendha learned that she would marry Rand al'Thor in her testing, and that's why she was angry at him. How do we know that? This statement right here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I wish we got a few more of these little nuggets.
Agreed.
Because this one is so precious and wonderful.
It's really nice. It's really nice to be like, nope, that would go badly. I know, I've seen prophecy. It's not really prophecy. It's just like an if-then statement, right? If you go, then you think bad things will happen.
Right. It's reminds me of kind of a Finn prophecy sort of thing. It's except for the if-then part, but it's like, it's not a matter of negotiating the thing. It's just, here is a statement of reality. This is just what is. Make your choice as you will. You can decide to do whatever you want, but like, this is what it is. And she doesn't know it until the moment of truth. I like that part about the wise ones test, that like most of it is just in your subconscious until it needs to come up. There's a sense of like, you just got to trust that you know what you know, which is like a big part of the wise one training thing is trusting that you know what you know.
And it's a big part of being wise.
Yeah.
And I think being called wise one, like, I think that's why that first test is, a step in making you wise, right? Is that occasionally a wise one says, no, we're not going to do this. Or yes, we need to do this. And you just have to go with the fact that they might know something you don't. They are wiser than you are because they've seen the future. Many futures. Yeah,
you're like, you are who I trust to be wise, and that is your decision, so that's what we're doing. Yeah, for sure. But it's also, even her more practical arguments are good. Like, Rand has people around him ready to blow you up. Like, you weren't looped in on this memo. It's not your circus, not your monkeys.
And so, as they're arguing, the beacon gets brighter. He doesn't get any more worried, so she's like, okay, I'm just going to have to trust that he's doing the best thing. And she turns around and says, you are already much wiser than I, not to mention braver and more cool-headed. I don't have anything to teach you about being a wise one, Avienda.
Yeah, and that's the flirting back where Avienda blushes, and it's just you two are so gay.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also very true. I mean, like, that is a wise one maneuver to be like, stick to your lane. This is your problem.
And this is one of our first times where Elaine says, don't tell me I'll endanger the baby. Min says the baby will be fine. I can totally run into danger and everything will be fine because Min. So take a shot every time Elaine tries to justify bad behavior based on Min's prophecy.
Is this the first time that she says that?
I think it might. Pretty close. Because, like...
We could keep a tally.
Yeah.
How many times does Elaine cite Min's viewing for her babies?
Too many is the answer. Too many.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that is, we are starting on that part of the arc. That part of the thing that will not go away for the rest of the series.
Nope.
Yeah, so they go back to Camelin. They continue on with doing what they're doing, and we will join them next time. Literally exactly where we leave them off this time.
Yep, riding out of the gateway.
Yeah, I'll leave us with the last little paragraph that just really sums up the best parts of what Elaine's arc is. I must leave him to take care of himself, she thought as she rode through. Light, how often had she thought that? No matter. Rand was the love of her heart and the joy of her life, but Andor was her duty. Yes, she did say duty.
Damn it, you beat me to it.
I heard it coming. I heard it in my mind.
Duty.
But next chapter opens up with a map of the city to kind of help break up the fact that we are literally stepping through the gateway as we move on to the next chapter.
You've noticed that Camelin looks like an anatomical heart, right?
I'm pretty sure that's been pointed out to me before. It also looks like a stylized rose.
Well, yeah. I always went with anatomical heart just because it's the heart of,
Yeah.
Elaine's the heart of Rand, and I don't know, I see a ventricle, and...
She's the heart of the land, you're saying? Mm-hmm. Andor is the actual beating heart of the continent. I'll take it. But yeah, that was a long recording because of the tangents.
A lot of tangents, yeah.
But like you said, also, this was a dense chapter in terms of world building and character development that we've referenced throughout the series, so throughout the podcast. So while not a lot happened in the chapter, I feel like we also were like, the things that don't happen here are happening elsewhere. I don't know. We did talk about a lot of in-world stuff.
This is where I would say the podcast can really shine in the slog, because it makes a lot of jumping off points and references, and there's a lot of tangents we can really talk about during the slog. And we can find all the details that actually matter and walk right past the characters that get mentioned only once and are only in this chapter. And yeah, I think that's sorting that out. We're sorting that out. I think that's helpful for a lot of people to be like, what do I care about in this chapter? And that's where we can really shine. So even though it's harder work than some of the early chapters, which is why I think I'm like, oh, do I have to do it? Because it is more work, I think, to pull it apart. But I think it's where we do shine as a podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And next week, we have a special guest that I lined up. Don't know if I ever told you about this, but
I don't know if it's on is it even on the spreadsheet?
Yeah, it is on the spreadsheet. And it is going to be happening next week. It's in the events. We're going to be having Charnice from What in Color.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
For Chapter 11, Talk of Debts. And yeah, she is half of What in Color, which is a first-time reader podcast. She is obviously the veteran reader because her first-time reader is still working through Eye of the World. They just got started and they are still like, Matt hasn't even picked up the dagger yet. Like, they are.
It's why we have Gus from Allie and Gus on, not Allie.
Yes, very much so. Yeah,
but because we don't have, it doesn't make sense to have first time readers on this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. But I've really been enjoying listening to them, and so yeah, I invited Charnice to come on, so you can all look forward to that next week.
Awesome.
Also, I want to remind our listeners of our affiliate sponsored people, Querencia, because I, once again, listened to Tarvalon After Dark and got a good idea of how professionals would actually maybe possibly pitch them. And I'm going to try to do it without copy and pasting their audio this time.
Did you actually do that last time?
I did actually do that. I literally messaged them and was like, can I copy and paste your audio? And then they said yes. So yeah, the episode that comes out on Thursday, it's literally like they're going along and then they give their promo code, but I just spliced myself into it. Like, it's embarrassing.
All right, so this is promo code Take Two, where Radia actually tries.
Yeah, so basically Querencia is a queer-owned, Black-owned queer apparel company, and they put a lot of their profits towards things like the Trevor Project and other queer causes. So you can get really cool stuff for being your best queer self from some really cool queer people in a way that also helps other queer people. And if you use promo code WOTS at their website, you will get 10% off and make us feel very important and special and like we helped make the world better. And the products are pretty cool. Like, comfort-wise, this is the same company that WatCon did their t-shirts through.
Oh, those are good quality.
Yeah, those were really, really comfy. And I've gotten a couple of shirts that are comfortable, though I think I got the wrong size, but that's on me. I need to order a different size and test that out. But they've got these queer pride boxes right now because June is Queer Pride Month. And so you get like a whole assortment of things. But yeah, they've got all kinds of fun rainbow themed, pronoun themed, history themed, empowerment themed products that you can go check out. And with promo code WOTS, you can get 10% off. So go do that at querencia.co/WOTS, please and thank you. That feels so weird.
You gotta go. You've got to create a ad read voice that's different than your normal voice.
My only ad read voices have always been like spoofing ad reads.
Right. Well, just do that.
I have a great ad read voice, but it's a spoof, and it's hard to take myself seriously when I'm doing a spoof. When I'm doing a spoof, Yeah, I need a script and I need a voice that I don't use entirely to make mockery.
Querencia, comfortable t-shirts and other apparel. Good to wear at all times. Support the podcast now by going to Querencia.com and using the promo code WOTS. Remember, that's WOTS to support the podcast. See? He just made...
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, just go super deep and do an ad read.
Yeah, it's making me want to find more little affiliate things like that, because it's not really specific to us. It's just they have an affiliate program that anyone can sign up with, and I'm I just got this cool new stim to play with. That's quiet on mic, and I'm like, I actually got this with a promo code from a creator on Twitter. So I'm like, I wonder if I could make this another promo code. I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned to see how far we can sell out while sounding not like total professionals.
Have we gotten any income from it yet?
No.
No. Yeah. So okay. Anyway,
it's been out there for all of 2 weeks. I mean,
that's fair.
Early
That's
days.
fair. The writing on the page is dense. That's when I say it's dense, I don't know how else to explain it. The writing on the page actually fills the majority of the page. There aren't many paragraph breaks. There's very little dialogue, and there's just a lot of continuous thoughts. So, and then just a lot of single named characters that are in this chapter and only this chapter. Which makes for a lot of names and titles and such that feel like they're important, but, we don't need to keep in our heads. So there's a lot of really good stuff in this chapter as well, but picking through it was I can imagine difficult for someone with some ADHD tendencies.
It was hard to give a shit, knowing how much of it doesn't ever matter again.
Do you want to go through Winter's Heart first? We got Deshiva running.
Let's see. This is a chapter where the thing starts up, and he's already into it. Yeah, let's start with Deshiva.
Okay, just to get that out of the way.
I enjoyed this one. This is one of my more favorite of the POVs.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the few times where we're really getting... There's a little plot line that goes through Deshiva's POVs as well as a few other people's POVs, right? Because we're with Deshiva and he's slinking along thinking maybe I'll be the hero, which I'd like to talk about that for a little while. And then Codswain is using as lessening the shield in that moment to sort of help Nynaeve. And this is in the later POVs, right? And then, so I think Deshiva had a moment where he had an opportunity to actually take the whole thing down.
In this POV?
No. Later on as he's creeping up to that, right?
Gotcha.
So I really do think, and we see that through 3 or 4 different POVs, and I'm not entirely sure I'm right about that. There's some issue with the timing, but I did read through those today and go, there's a moment where Codswain's shield was down. He was creeping up. He was overlooking Rand and that group. And if he hadn't been, vaporized in a ball of fire, he probably actually had the opportunity to take them out.
I love how close this whole encounter is. It's down to the wire on the defenders versus the attackers. It's really fun.
Especially because he was taken out by a dark friend. Which is just always
because
fun.
Of another dark friend who's not really a dark friend.
Right, because of Baron.
It's so good.
It's dark friends all the way down.
Yes.
Crouching behind a fallen log, Osengar panted from the exertion of running. Those months masquerading as Corlin Deshiva had not made him any fonder of exercise. The explosions that had almost killed him died away, then started up again somewhere in the distance, and he cautiously raised himself enough to peek over the log. Not that he supposed a piece of wood was very much protection. He had never been a soldier, not really. His talents, his genius, lay elsewhere. The Trollocs were his making, and thus the Murdral that had sprung from them, and many other creatures that had rocked the world and made his name famous. The access key blazed with Saidin, but he could feel lesser amounts being wielded too, in various directions. He had expected others of the Chosen to be there ahead of him, had hoped they might have finished the task before he arrived, but plainly they had not. plainly Althor had brought along some of those Ashaman, and by the amount of Saidin that had gone into the eruptions that targeted him, Kalendor as well, and maybe some of his tame, so-called Aes Sedai. Crouching, he bit his lip. The forest was a very dangerous place, more so than he had expected, and nowhere for a genius. But the fact remained that Moradin terrified him. The man had always terrified him. From the very beginning. He had been mad with power before they were sealed into the bore, and since they had been freed, he seemed to think he was the Great Lord. Moradin would find out somehow if he fled, and kill him. Worse, if Althor succeeded, the Great Lord might decide to kill both of them, and Osengar as well. He did not care whether they died, but he did very much about himself. He was not good at judging time by the sun, but it was obviously still short of noon. Hauling himself from the ground, he dabbed at the dirt on his clothes, then gave up in disgust and began to skulk from tree to tree in what he imagined was a stealthy manner. It was towards the key that he skulked. Perhaps one of the others would finish the man before he got close to it, but if not, perhaps he would find the chance to be a hero. Carefully, of course.
It was good attitude for him.
Thanks. That was fun.
There's no place for a genius. Dabbing at his clothes, clutching at his pearls.
Oh, God. Look at that dirt I got on my silk. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a fop.
I can't, every time when I read that line, perhaps he would have a chance to be hero, I can't help but think of the Egwene line. Right?
Like, bitch, please, sit down.
Can't others get to be a hero too, Rand? Or that one?
Some of us, yes, but not
yes,
you.
Not you. No. You're working with a bad guy. You don't get to be a hero.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wants to be a hero for the dark side.
Right, which makes you not a hero. That makes you the bad guy. I'm just saying. The hero might not be the appropriate word. Do they? Yes, they do. That's why we use them.
Is there a there? So this is the POV where we get unequivocal, even I can't screw it up proof.
Right.
Osengar is Agenor.
Is Corlin Deshiva.
Deshiva, Agenor, Osengar are the same person. This is the POV where even I can't get confused about it.
This is one of the few times where I think Jordan finally went, fine, I'll tell you.
Right. And for that, we thank you, RJ.
Yeah, right. Because it was getting real confusing there for a little while. But, there's a lot of clues in here. Moradin, from the beginning, he used to think he was the Dark One. I mean, that helps us pinpoint that Moradin is Ishamael, right? Like, there's just so much information dropping about the Forsaken in this one POV. Things that were implied many, many times throughout the series, but here we have real solid evidence that these things are true. And, we've, as the Spoilers podcast, have gone through this whole series knowing this fact and knowing these facts. But, it's always nice to be like, yeah, and there's the proof right there. See?
Right.
That's what we're basing.
We've been referencing.
Right.
We've hit the citation.
Right. Citation no longer needed.
Yeah, it's a citation in situ. Yeah, I really like the part about how Moradin had terrified him from the beginning. It's one of the few times we get a sense for how the Forsaken interacted before the war, because we only think of them as being mythic figures from the end of the war and who they are now. This is referring to like centuries of drama that had been building between these two people long before the war even broke out. And like, I find that to be a really fun bit of filling in that, cosmic microwave background radiation of our world building.
Well, and also really finding out, like, why is this guy, this coward, this terrible warrior Forsaken? The Trollocs were his making, and thus the Myrddraal, right? And the Myrddraal is what literally gives the Dark One a foothold in this world. He inhabits the body of a corrupted Myrddraal. That's what Shadar Haran is. So, like, obviously, like, there's a lot of credit that goes to, well, Shiva, I guess I'll call him. What name do you want to pick? From the beginning, because he sort of created this corruption and what is essentially the armies of the Dark One. He can't lead them. He can't control them. He can't feed them. He can't do the logistics, but he is the origin. And for that, he gets to be Forsaken. Now, how useful is a scientist on the battlefield? Not very.
Well, in a war where there's scientists on the other side, it could be handy. But if you only have one scientist in the entire medieval mess, then...
Right. Yeah. He doesn't have his tools. We talked about this before with him, where he just, it's like if you know how to use CRISPR, but you don't have the machine that does CRISPR, you're not much of a geneticist.
Right, yeah. Maybe you can help people rediscover animal husbandry in the aftermath of the world, but like that's about it and not super useful in war. Yeah, it makes sense that he was a Forsaken once, but you'd think that the Dark One would just drop him like a hot potato. Once
the first time he got killed?
Like floor. Exactly. It's like, well, you're no good. Like literally.
I mean, clearly he doesn't come back a second time, right? I mean, the first time I can see the Dark One being like, okay, it was a fluke. You had just popped out. You encountered, you attempted to play tug of war with Rand and, burned yourself out. Like that's, you went up against the Dragon Reborn and lost. Fine. At least you were fighting the Dragon Reborn. I'll give you a second chance. But this, you got fireballed by someone who's on our side. Really, man? No, you're done. That's it. Cut off. Right.
Yeah, you're done. And I mean, everything about him is just you. I mean, what he imagined was a sneaky fashion is just one of my favorite lines because that is his entire personality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just whatever he's doing, he's imagining that he's doing it really well, and everyone else is looking at him like, dude, no. Mm-mm. No, which is literally what happened in his lab. That was how all of his ethics panels committee reviews went. That's how every time he unveiled his latest new pet project, that was literally the response every time was, what the fuck, bro?
Well, and I love that he gets absolutely spotted, right?
Yeah, just by someone with their eyeballs, not with magic, not with a special tool, just by paying attention. You were not sneaky enough to avoid someone paying attention. I mean, Elsa is not noted for being particularly good at woodscraft or Aiel or anything. She's just some random city girl dark friend.
It was as clear to her as Saidin made the face of the man trying to hide on that hill while peeking around a tree trunk.
Okay, fine. I guess a little magic was involved.
But yes, the whole him peeking around the tree trunk and her just being like, I see you. He's hiding like a toddler. With the feet sticking out from underneath the curtain. And it's yeah, we can see you just fine. You're not doing a very good job of it.
Yeah. And I mean, and to his credit, much like Moghedien, he stays against his better inclination as a survivor through this. Moghedien also is I don't want to be here and I don't want to do this, but I know I can't leave. So I'm going to hang out. Both of the cowards do show up and attempt to do something. Moghedien just attempts to survive. And does. Osengar tries to be a hero, quote unquote, carefully. And that ends badly.
And who doesn't show up?
Morden.
True. There is one other Forsaken that doesn't show up there. She's punished for it later.
Grandal, right?
I think
No, Grandal shows up. Sende shows up.
Messana.
Oh, Messana. Wait. Semirog. Semirog doesn't show up. Messana doesn't show up.
I think Messana is given an excuse or something. Semirog, sorry. Yeah, I think Semirog is given an excuse.
Because she's, deeply involved in the recent
probably deep undercover, something like that. I don't remember.
The entire Shanshan royal family. Huh. Yeah, because there are a handful of Forsaken that don't arrive. But yeah, Messana does... Does Messana get punished for that? Is that one of the things she gets punished for?
Yeah, totally. She's punished in Knife of Dreams.
Yeah, I would like to see the note that Semirog gave to Shaidar Haran to get out of that one.
I'm sick.
Right, exactly.
Because, we get Moghedien. Someone does show up in color-changing dress.
I would assume that's Grandal.
But I think that's Grandal, yeah.
So Messana and Semirog are the only ones that don't arrive, and only one of them gets punished.
Let me look that up.
Well, Mogedion shows up. She just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, Mogedion shows up and hides, but she's there.
Yeah, she just sits within the zone of shit happening. And then she gets, like, sucked in by the negative air pressure. It's very cool. I don't know. It's weird. I don't see why Masana should get punished in particular. Maybe it's just a matter of not proving that she didn't hide the whole time. Like, only we know that.
I got nothing. I can't figure out where Semrog was during the cleansing.
Yeah, how does Moradin know that Masana didn't show up then?
Because it's not like he's got a Kosuvra on her or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no, like, roll call at the beginning of the event to be like, who showed up.
I kind of think it's more mundane that he just has spies around each of the Forsaken.
Oh, that would make sense, having someone who can report in some capacity about their activity. That's the simplest explanation.
Quick follow-up to Winter's Heart. Semrog does actually appear.
Oh.
She does show up.
We just don't get a POV from her?
We don't get a POV from her. Sorry, I'm reading The Great Blight, and it says, in Winter's Heart, Semrog misses another meeting of the Forsaken. She does, however, report to the cleansing of Saidin at Shadow Logoth. She battles there against those defending Randall Thor, but she's unsuccessful at stopping the cleansing. But I don't see any evidence of that in the chapter itself. Yeah. I think that might just be one of those things that gets retconned later, that she was there. We just never saw her in any of the POVs that we happened to be with. Because, I mean, it is a whole day and it does bounce around. And we're only with these characters for like a few minutes at a time, and they're fighting all day. So, sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think, like, did I miss fighting someone and I missed it? Like, there's some POV here where, like, you know, Eben Hopwell is taking her out, but Varen's fighting Grendel, Eben Hopwell's fighting Arengar, and then you got Mogedion, and the battle's over.
I mean, it is entirely possible that it's a retcon that doesn't break the original canon, because we totally could be missing things, right? Like, Fog of War, there are entire theaters of the war that you might miss because you're too enmeshed in what you're doing. Like, that's not out of bounds, but I can't recall any evidence on the page for where she was, so you have to retcon it with headcanon, I think. I mean, we're going through it with the finest tooth comb possible, so... Yeah.
And from what I can tell, there's no reference of her being in Winter's Heart, she's other than in Chapter 13, so... I think maybe that's just an assumption because she wasn't punished, that she was there.
Yeah. Which, I mean, fine. Unsatisfying, but not, like, in a really annoying way.
All right. So, Tor website Q&A. I think I might have... So, it does look like that was referenced in more... Someone probably asked the question, why wasn't Semrog punished for not being at the last battle? And it looks like Robert Jordan basically responded... And I'm not reading the actual quote, but pretty much responded with, she was there, we just didn't see her. That's the only thing I can think of that would justify her being included like that, based on a Q&A.
I'll take it. It's a cop-out, but he built it for himself, so... It's not like some bullshit like Bella's retired.
I'm 100% on board with the horse that Noel's riding, even though it doesn't look like Bella, is the spirit of Bella, just how she would look in pure spirit form.
I mean, Brigida doesn't always look exactly the same in life to life. Like, there's no reason to think that Bella was expressing, like, her truest form in this particular lifetime as a heroic horse. There's probably just, like, the shagginess or something, so, you know, like the braid with Brigida. Like, Bella's got, like, a feature that stays the same. But yeah, Noel absolutely 100% rides to Oliver's aid on Bella. That is how that works.
I mean, she saved the world.
Right. And also, much like Brigida, she just died at that spot.
Right. Exactly.
Like, it is literally like Brigida. Bella and Brigida are basically like parallels, human and horse. Yeah. But seriously, they die and then they come back basically over their own bodies to save the person who is heartbroken at their loss.
Right.
Like, that's... Right. Yes, it is Bella, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. And, like, this is one of those chapters where also Robert Jordan is wrong about a thing, and I'm wrong about that, too.
We'll talk about that thing, because I think there's a way to interpret it that is entirely in line with what you think.
Okay, cool.
Question for you. Do you want to tease your other collab at all?
I'm going to tease that I'm going to tease a future collab.
Okay.
Y'all stay tuned. There is a project afoot from Fox and Raven Media that may or may not ever actually get announced on this year's podcast. So consider that your privileged information.
Teaser to a teaser trailer.
Yeah. This is the 2-second hood reveal clip. Oh, so I guess I should give you the hood reveal. No, I won't.
No.
I'm just going to give you a hood. There's a hood. Maybe there's more than one hood. There might be more than one hood in this one blurry shot.
Oh, Varen got announced. I have to.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of the thing I'm referencing,
I have to ask you what you think about that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so here for it. I am so here for it. I mean, as soon as I saw her like headshot, I was like, I mean, that's got to be Varen or Shiriam, like way back when. And then when they announced who Shiriam was, I'm like, okay. So she's Varen, right? She's
right.
Varen. She's
right.
Varen. She's
yeah.
Varen. And
we've known
we've
for a while. It's just been confirmed, and we got that headshot of her pulling the cloak off.
Yeah. That one little 2-second clip of Mira Seal. I always want to put a T in it. I always want to say Steel, and I know that's wrong. I don't want to say it wrong, but yeah, I've only seen her in a couple of things, but like I definitely remember her from that one scene she had in Sandman. I'm very excited. Like I wasn't really worried that Varen wasn't going to be cast, but like it's real cool to have someone who just automatically looks like her. I'm so freaking excited. And I also love that they did the hood reveal thing. Like this entire like crew of directors loves the hood reveal for this show. Like that is just, they like guts and they like hood reveals. That's what I can tell about these people.
And apparently knives coming through the back of your throat. They've used that one a couple times. So
yeah. So I'm so excited that Varen is going to be, you know, as she is in the books, really one of our first introductions to an Aes Sedai other than Moraine. And thus, you know, the brown Aja is really the first Aja that we get introduced to other than the blue. I'm super excited that she's been really our first piece of news in a long time. I suspect she's going to be fairly early on in the season, and that makes me happy.
So here's a question. What's taking season 2 so long? What is going on? Do you have any idea what's going on? Any speculation as to what's going on, as to why it's been delayed? Or even if it's not delayed necessarily, but why we're, you know, a year and a half out from the release of the initial show, and we still don't even know when the second season is coming.
Well, to again reference the latest Choedan After Dark, they actually had Ali and Gus on to talk about stuff to do with the show. And what I suspected was true was something that Ali said, which is that there's just so many different moving parts that it's really hard to ever say when something's going to come out. Like Amazon doesn't know. And so that's why we haven't been told. And so, you know, working backwards from that, like there's a lot of moving parts and who knows what breaks when and how that screws up like the massive interconnected machine of how these things work. I don't know specifically, but I suspect it has to do with there being a billion different players moving on a zillion different timelines. And so like no one has ever known. And then a lot of curveballs apparently keep hitting that industry. You know, the season 1, it was the pandemic that hit everybody. But in the time since, it seems like that industry is just having issues that are way outside of my sphere of knowing about things, culminating in this writer's strike, which I, you know, obviously absolutely support, but it's just so far out of my sphere of knowing about things that that's like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really hard to carry on with this podcast with the writer's strike going on. I mean, we get such detailed written notes on how we do this. No, obviously we do support the writer's strike, and we're not part of the Writers Guild, so we're not striking. This is all off the cuff. Yeah.
We are hobbyists. It's very different.
Very different. Do you want to get started on our hobby?
I do have one more announcement about our hobby. That other thing I texted you the other day, I'm making an executive decision that we're going to make we're going to make the gatekeeping on the ad-free episodes just the same as for live recordings. We're just going to move it all to $1. So if you're a patron of any level whatsoever, you're going to be able to get access to the ad-free episodes Yeah, I was playing with having them at different tiers because it felt like I needed to have things at different tiers. And it just feels weird given how few people come to live recordings versus are at the $1 level and listening to the podcast. So I'm not sure how to make all the episodes I've already published like change tiers. I'm sure I can. The ones that are in Patreon already, I'm sure I can go back and change those to be at the $1 tier. I don't know when I'll figure out how to make that happen, but going forward, I'm just going to do that. So yeah, if you have not yet bothered exploring getting that private RSS feed into your podcast player so you can have ad-free episodes, I definitely encourage you to do so because I want you to have access to that.
It's so weird to be a content creator because you're given all these levers to pull and you feel like you should be pulling some of them, but then when you sit back and think about it, you're like, it just doesn't necessarily make sense, especially with the size we are and the way we're doing things. It's just, I don't know. Yeah,
it's difficult.
You said we should open it up, and I was like, yeah, totally. I think before I argued for the $5 level, but now I'm thinking like, I don't know why I was on that bandwagon for a while, you know?
It's so conflicting because you want to make it make money and you want to be smart about it and you want to imitate like what people who are successful at this are doing.
Right.
But then you have to calibrate back to what you're actually doing. And like the more I get into the various podcasts I'm getting into, the more I'm getting a sense for how ads work and how different podcasters choose to use ads, the more I'm realizing where our podcast fits in that overall continuum of my preferences. And like, I am my own market research, right? I want to make the podcast I would want to listen to. So I want the ads to be placed and gate kept the way I would like them access to. And like Wheel Takes has decided to make theirs like ours, but they just started at the $1 thing. And oh my God, it's so nice. It's so relieving. It's so weird how many podcasts I listen to with ads now. It's relieving when I get to ones without. So I'm like, I want to make that more accessible to my audience because my audience are people I really care about. But also I am still subjecting them to ads. So am I just a lying hypocrite? Like it's a lot of different mental pieces to hold.
Well, and I can confidently say we get relatively little monetary value out of the ads compared to what we get from the Patreons. And so I would rather support the Patreons with the ad-free experience because, that's not going to cost us anything significant. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like, you could listen to an album 100 or 1,000 times on Spotify, or you could buy it once.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, if you're listening to us, you're going to make us however many slices of a penny. But if you're $1 a month patron, we're probably getting more money from you that way than from your listens.
Almost certainly.
So yeah, it feels like a good thing to do that as a reward. I have really conflicted feelings about baked in ad reads by podcast hosts because they're a lot harder to get away from.
Yeah.
But also I do want some of that sweet, sweet actual money.
There was a day when baked in read podcasts were from people who used the product and were reading about their personal experience. That has passed. Now they're just ads read by the people who host the podcast, and I don't like them as much. As I'm like, at least if it's going to be an ad, make it sound like an ad, so I'm not fooled into thinking you actually like this thing.
One of the podcasts I listen to, they do actually have sometimes their ads are legitimate things. Like one guy was like, he got LASIK. And so he's advertising for LASIK surgery. He's like, no, this is making my fucking life way better. It's like, okay. Yeah. But no, you're right. I do find it way less annoying when the person's like, but legitimately, this is part of how I support my business. Like I use this thing. And yeah, that's less common now. Yeah. I just want to be a podcast editor and not have to think about this. I just want to get paid by other people who have to make these decisions for themselves, and I'm just part of their budget as an editor.
Right,
that's what I want.
You want to be a contract editor, which means you need to start editing outside the Wheel of Time sphere because that's pulling from the same sort of small bucket. And if you want to pull from a bigger bucket, you need to start, really looking at expanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to make a career out of tapping the same small group of people over and over and over again. You really have to either approach a wider audience or make connections in a different industry, I think.
Yeah.
Or just start your own, get a podcast that's got wider appeal. That's another thought too, right? Like that's one of the reasons why, my girlfriend and her sister have been working on this podcast and it's out there. And I think it has wider appeal than something like the Wheel of Time Spoilers because it's just them talking about families. But at the same time, it's going to have a lot harder time getting started.
Well, yeah. I mean, what makes it unique from every other asshole and their sibling talking about family shit?
Right.
With What Spoilers, we are so incredibly niche that there is literally an audience that can't get what they want from anything other than what we're doing.
Yeah. So and there's an interesting balance there where you want something that can have a core audience but can also expand and blow up. Anyway, enough business talk. Let's get to these books.
No, I want to keep hyper-focusing on my business goals.
I know that's
all I'm thinking about now. Fuck these books.
Can you start the episode with that?
Yes. Recording. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Wheel of Time Spoilers.
All right, life updates that we want to make on recording. Anything you got going on that you want to share with the adoring fans out there who are just waiting for word from the next Aradia life update where they really, really need to know what's going on with your porch?
So I have a new nemesis. I want you all to take very careful note. Actually, you don't have to take note. I don't know if these fucking birds come near where you live, but I have a new nemesis, and it is 2 nesting pairs of barn swallows that are bound and determined to build some nests on our back porch, which faces out towards the creek. So barn swallows, they like to nest on buildings like barns, obviously, and they need mud to build their little nest cup things. And our neighbor has a barn that's probably 100 years old or more, but he built a side building onto it on the same side of that building as the side of our house that has the back porch. And so apparently these 2 pairs of barn swallows are in the real estate market. And I have been fighting with them for 3 days to keep them off of my porch. I'm knocking down where they put their little mud pats to try to make the thing. And I'm putting up clothes hangers with streamers of tin foil and strings across the thing. I was doing it for days. Today we had to put up a plastic sheet that completely blocks off the entire porch and blocks the one window that my poor husband, who is still basically recliner bound 23 hours out of the day because of his injury, he can't see the trees now because that's the only way to keep these fucking birds from flying in and shitting all over our porch. And it's normally I love swallows. Swallows eat their weight in mosquitoes, and mosquitoes are literally the only creature I'd be willing to send to extinction because I am selfish like that. And most of the swallows we have around here are violet green swallows. They're beautiful, literally violet green and bright white bellies. They're really distinctive. We have a zillion of them. And every now and then you see these little flashes of red, these redder bellies. And those are the barn swallows. They have forked tails. They're very different looking if you can manage to see them close enough up. Normally I don't notice them, or normally you don't see them. I thought it was really cool that we had 4 of them. And I was I think we have 4. I don't think it's 2. I don't think it's 6. I'm pretty sure we have 4. I thought they were so cool last year. And now this year I know for a fact that we have 4. And I'm so mad at them. So mad. But supposedly we only have to wait them out through June, and then they will have settled on a different place to make their nests so that they can do their brood, and we'll be able to get our porch back. But yeah, that is the latest drama from wherever the fuck it is that I live that needs a clever moniker for the podcast audience.
The library.
Yes, that's the latest missive from the White Tower 13th Depository Secret Library Garden.
Actually, speaking of birds, I discovered a hummingbird feeder on my porch, and we've seen a hummingbird or 2 come flying around and like just came face to face with Never and was like in her face, and she's like, "Why are you here?" And then I looked up and I'm like, "Oh, there's a hummingbird feeder there. I bet in the past it's been filled." So I went ahead and cleaned it. It was really gross, and filled it with a little bit of sugar water. So here's hoping we get some hummingbirds.
Very cool. You have to make sure to change that stuff out pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like a weird fungus will like get in their faces and make them all sad. But that's super cool. Hummingbirds are so pretty and they're so curious. I had to catch one once because it got like inside a greenhouse and I had to like catch it with my hands. And oh my God, such a precious tiny jewel. But yes, they are very angry. There's a great True Facts video about them. They're just like hopped up on sugar, little like warrior junkies. Like murderous little birds.
They go through a lot of sugar. That's very true. Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, they're in like a metabolic arms race against like how light can they be, but also then how frequently do they have to eat because they have no like fuel reserves on board. Yeah, they're awesome.
Oh, and I got myself a new couch.
Oh.
I should say Travis went out and found me a couch and then found a truck and then helped load it into the truck and then deposited it in my living room. So huge shout out to Travis for helping me never get
Travis
a couch.
Got you a couch.
Yeah, basically. He's really good at he's like, as long as you provide the money, he's really good at finding stuff and finding good deals when you want something. So he's been a good friend for doing that kind of stuff for me. And yeah, it's nice. So now we've got our two like little love seats that we were making do with in the office. So they may help with the audio quality and help with the vibration, although I think
absolutely large squishy things to break up the recording space.
Yeah,
that's good.
The more the better.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, but long distance was so much cheaper to send a postcard than it was to call somebody and update them. You could, $1 for the postcard and 35 cents to send it, versus a phone call, which could be, dollars a minute.
Yeah, my mom tells me horror stories of calling her mom back in the States when she was on tour in Canada in the 80s, and just how many minutes it took for all of the connections to get made. And then it was like super, super scratchy because there's like a zillion connections from Iowa to, however far north she was at the time. Like, yeah, again, I'm just too young to have the instinctive understanding of this.
And I'm just old enough to have experienced it and then watched it disappear basically almost as soon as I started using it. So I sort of saw some of that analog technology in existence, but by the time I had to pay for it, we had the internet. So
my parents were such early adopters of internet and computer stuff. Like I was learning how to write and how to type at the same time. Mm-hmm. They were just at the same time. There was like my dad set up one of the first websites in like the whole like community. Like it was, yeah, I was exposed to that stuff so early in the 90s.
Where I definitely have the more delayed, like not until I was probably 10 did I really get it my first, which is still, I think, I don't know, what's our age difference? Like around 10 years? 6 years?
Yeah, just under 10.
Yeah, so we were probably experiencing that stuff at the same time, but you were a toddler and I was like a preteen,
Right,
and so there's sort of that similar level of we experienced, but like it's interesting. I grew up without it, so I did have some idea, but I think I was still young enough that my brain totally adapted to it. Yeah.
Whereas like, yeah, I'm in the place where like some people my age are more in your camp and some people are more in my camp. And then you get down to like my younger brother, and nobody born in the mid 90s remembers before the internet. Isn't a thing.
No, and as devices have become simpler and easier to use, there's actually I think a decrease in technical skill level, right?
Oh yeah.
Among the younger generation.
Black
I think
box plug and play versus having to like string all your components together and understand how to solder shit. And like, yeah, I do not have many of those technical skills at all.
In the same way that I think our parents' generation had peak car knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Like people before them didn't have a lot of car knowledge because not everybody had a car, and we don't really have them because they're too advanced for us to really work on. We have to take them to a specialist. If anything breaks, it's like, well, you can change the oil and that's about it. And I feel like the same things happen with computers, where like we were just peak. You can work on your own computer. It's those guys who say, "Oh, I remember back when I could get an old Ford and tear the engine apart myself and get it working again." And I sort of think that way about computers. Back when we all had Windows and Mac had terminal. You could access everything. It wasn't all online before the internet really took over. Because now there's so many tools that sync up with the internet that you just don't have the control over the servers.
Yeah, vast majority of my computer use is from a dumb terminal that accesses the internet. Like that's so much of what I do, with the exception of editing. Editing I actually do.
Editing is local.
On an old school, it's in my hard drive. And Brandon can build computers. He was one of those people who was tearing apart and rebuilding computers as a relatively young person, early on in computer life. And the computer I work on now, he built for me and will continue to modify and upgrade for me. But I never had to learn those skills and I never will. But he's got them and my brother's got them. So I'm set for having super cool nerd shit. But yeah, we're, with the land we have now, we really want a farm truck. And it's but it has to be from no later than 2000. So that way you can just basically kick it and put a stick in one of the odd holes that's been rusted out and it'll be fine. A 98 Ford Ranger, please. That's what we need.
No, when I was looking at buying new cars, sort of mid-pandemic, I needed a car. And I talked about buying it here. And I ended up with a 2004 Honda. And one of the reasons I ended up with such an old car is I felt like I was paying a lot more for a newer car. And they all had touchscreens. And I wanted buttons. I don't want a touchscreen in my car. And I think the newer cars are starting to get away from that trend. I think they're realizing what a bad idea it was, and more because people are saying they're terrible. But I think that I ended up getting an older car that was in better shape than somebody. It was in great shape. Didn't get ripped off or anything, But part of the reason I was actually more excited about the older car was the lack of the touchscreen that I felt like I was being forced to accept in these newer cars.
Yeah.
And maybe that makes me a grandpa. Get your touchscreen off my lawn. But I love touchscreens. I love my phone. But I don't want it on my desktop and I don't want it in my car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the desktop screen thing, it breaks down. It takes so much extra power.
We've got them at work now. And the only thing the touchscreen does is when someone goes to point to something, they accidentally click on it.
Yeah, any other podcasty news before we sign off?
No, just to let you know that I was thinking about going skydiving because I'm going to have babies and I've been told they're going to be healthy. No, I'm just kidding.
Skydiving is so much fun, though. I would go skydiving with you. I've only been once. I would totally go again. I have some friends who want to go skydiving, actually.
I honestly don't think I would ever do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have some friends who are seeking companions. I will. Apparently not a lot of people want to jump out of perfectly good airplanes, but I've done it once and it was just as amazing as I thought it would be, and I would totally do it again. It's weightlessness for such a long period of time is truly a wild experience.
The idea of it appeals to me. The reality of falling and heights and a physical parachute being the only thing keeping me alive is terrifying on a metaphysical sort of I don't think I could hang from a parachute. I just don't think I could do it. Not unless I absolutely had to. I've seen too many things built by man fail.
Yeah. I got it in my head when I was a very little kid. I wanted to do it. And the experience was just as amazing as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not a fan of heights normally, but I wanted that sensation so badly. I put up with the heights necessary to get there. Yeah. I don't want to go on carnival rides anymore because I know what happens when those things get set up for a couple of weeks and then put away again.
Yeah. That's you ever take IKEA furniture apart and back together a couple of times? Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
And then you do it while you're drunk?
What? Carney's drink? No.
Yeah, but then again, I also
Is
ride
Carney
in a
bad
car.
thing to say? Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, I don't think Carney's a slur.
Feels like it.
Rousties. I mean, adding E to the end of anything, yeah. But oh man, so Behind the Bastards this week is Vince McMahon, who I know basically nothing about. And it's a 6-parter, which the only other 6-parter they've ever done was for freaking Henry Kissinger. They've never done a 6-parter until Henry Kissinger. Now they're doing Vince McMahon. He's a 6-parter, and we didn't even get to Vince in this episode. This episode was all set up and backstory, and carnies are a huge part of where professional wrestling comes from.
Interesting.
Carny culture is a big part of the initial brew that professional wrestling arises out of.
I've heard so many people reference Behind the Bastards. I really need to just
Dude, you would love it.
I know.
Oh my God. It is your fucking style.
It's just, I'm like, can I really be that mad at that many people? Dude,
okay. So at the turn of the year, they posted their listener stats, and they were some people have listened to hundreds of hours of content. They've, binged our entire 5-year back catalog. What the fuck is wrong with you people that you would listen to? It took us 5 years to make all that. You listened to it all in 1 year. And I would did the math. I'm I'm one of those people. Mm-hmm. I started binging 12, 14 months before they made that post. I've listened to all the shit. And now I'm re-listening to a bunch of episodes with Brandon because he's interested in this stuff. So I'm re-listening to a bunch of them. And you get mad, but you learn the weirdest shit. Because the pitch of the podcast is the weird shit. It's not just a litany of war crimes. It's but why was this war criminal interesting? General Butt Naked. Come on. Such an interesting story. Yeah, he was a fucking war general that hurt people, but General Butt Naked was his fucking name. Okay? Yeah, no, it's an amazing podcast. I love it so much. And it's totally your jam. And they do non-bastards for Christmas episodes. And there's also an antidote podcast called Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff. It tends to be in the same periods of history and about the people who ended up ultimately losing. So there is kind of a depressing twist at the end because it's about labor organizers, which tend to get murdered. But it does the one from last week was about Josephine Baker, who I just know her as that one really beautiful picture of 1920s film stars, right? But she was a fucking spy in World War II who may very well have changed the course of the war. So fucking cool. She's so cool. So if Behind the Bastards gets you down, you can shift over to Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff from the same ecosystem of podcasts.
Nice.
Cool Zone Media. And that's very, very cool. Hence the name.
With that, I think it's time to turn off recording.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?